The sun hung low over Dusty Creek, painting the western sky in strokes of dying gold. The wind carried the dry whisper of tumbleweeds across the open plains, rolling past the weathered faces of men who had seen too much and cared too little. It was the year 1878, and the town of Dusty Creek sat right on the border of civilization and sin, a place where whiskey ran thicker than mercy, and men came to forget the ghosts of their past. In that hour of fading light, all eyes were fixed on a rough wooden stage built outside the saloon. A crowd of ranchers, prospectors, and drifters stood around it, the smell of sweat and tobacco hanging thick in the air. They'd come for something ugly, something that shouldn't have existed, but it did. Out here in the frontier, where law was as thin as the dust beneath their boots. They called it a bride auction, a cruel, shameful business, where desperate women were sold to lonely men for the promise of a better life. Some said it was mercy, others called it hell. But no matter what name they gave it, it was human pain in its purest form. Among the crowd stood a man named Colt Avery, tall, broad-shouldered, and wrapped in the silence of a man who'd long forgotten how to speak his heart. His face was rough, sunburned, and carved with guilt that ran deeper than the scars on his hands. Once he'd been a gunslinger, the kind mothers warned their sons about. But now he was just a rancher, trying to drown his past in the wide emptiness of his land. He didn't come to buy a woman. He came because he owed a favor. "Colt," said the sheriff beside him, spitting into the dust. "You got a good ranch and no one to keep it. Might be time to put some roots down." Colt's jaw tightened. "Roots don't grow in blood, Sheriff." The sheriff didn't answer. The auctioneer banged his hammer against the post, and the first woman was brought out, a young girl, barely 20, with eyes that had already seen too much sorrow. Men shouted, numbers flew, and coins changed hands. Colt's stomach turned. He didn't belong here, but he stayed. Then came her. The crowd quieted when she stepped into the light. She wasn't like the others. She walked with her head high, though her hands trembled. Her dress was torn, her face streaked with dust. But her eyes, those eyes, burned like wildfire beneath the dusk. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "This here's number 7. Name's Clara Mayfield. Says she was raised east of the mountains. Knows how to read, cook, and keep a house. Claims she ain't afraid of hard work." A few men chuckled, some whistled. But Colt didn't move. He couldn't. Something about her gaze reached inside him, like she could see through the grit and guilt that armored his soul. The bidding started low. $10, 15, 20, then silence. Colt didn't know why, but he raised his hand. 50. The crowd turned. That was more than any man had offered all night. The auctioneer blinked, then grinned. 50! "Do I hear 60? No one answered. Bang! The hammer came down. "Sold to the cowboy in the hat!" The men clapped his back, laughing. "Didn't know you had it in you, Avery." Colt ignored them. He reached for his wallet, paid the man, and walked to the stage. Clara's eyes met his, sharp, wary, and proud. "You bought yourself trouble, mister," she said softly. "Wouldn't be the first time," Colt muttered. He helped her down, and for the first time in years, something stirred inside him. Something he thought he'd buried beneath the bones of all the men he'd killed. They rode out in silence toward his ranch, miles away from town. The sky bled red behind them, and the desert swallowed their shadows whole. By the time they reached the small cabin near the foothills, night had settled deep and cold. Clara slid off the horse, her hands shaking from exhaustion. Colt opened the cabin door. It smelled of tobacco, gun oil, and loneliness. "You can take the bed," he said gruffly. "I'll sleep outside." She blinked. "You paid $50 for me. And you ain't even—" "I didn't buy you," he interrupted, his voice hard. "I bought a chance to do one thing right." She stared at him, confused. "You don't even know me." Colt looked into the darkness. "Don't need to. I just know what I've done." He walked out to the porch, sat down and lit a cigarette. The flame flickered against his rough face, revealing the weight of a man chained to his past. Inside, Clara sat on the bed trembling. She'd been bought before, used, traded, and discarded. But this man, he hadn't looked at her like property. He'd looked at her like she was something sacred, something he was trying to protect, maybe even save. That night, as the coyotes howled and the wind sang through the canyons, two broken souls lay awake under the same sky, each carrying wounds the other could not see. At dawn, Colt saddled his horse. Clara stood by the fence, her hair glowing gold in the morning light. "You could run," he said quietly. "I ain't gonna stop you." She looked at him for a long time. "And go where? Back to the men who think my worth's in a coin purse?" Colt didn't answer. "I'll work," she said finally. "You paid $50. I'll earn it back." He nodded. "Ain't about the money." "Then what is it about?" He looked at her, really looked at her, and said, "Redemption." Days turned into weeks. Clara worked the ranch, mending fences, feeding stock, and cooking meals she barely ate herself. Colt worked beside her in silence. Slowly, the air between them changed. The anger softened. The fear melted, and something warm began to bloom in the cold heart of the prairie. But Dusty Creek wasn't a place that let good things grow. One afternoon, a group of riders appeared on the ridge, 6 men, their faces hidden beneath black hats. The lead man rode a red stallion and carried a scar that stretched from his cheek to his jaw. Colt froze. He knew that face. It was Rufus Kane, the outlaw he once rode with, the man he'd betrayed to the law years ago. Kane spat on the ground and grinned. "Well, I'll be damned. Colt Avery, the preacher of redemption himself. Heard you went soft." Clara stepped back, her eyes wide. Colt's hand hovered near his gun. "You got no business here, Rufus." "Oh, I think I do," Rufus sneered. "See that woman you bought? She was one of ours. You stole from me, Colt, and I don't like being robbed." The wind stilled. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Colt's voice dropped low. "She ain't yours. She's free now." Rufus laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. "Free? Ain't no such thing out here." Then his smile vanished. "You took something that belonged to me. Now I'm taking it back." He signaled his men. Colt drew first. The desert exploded with gunfire. Dust rose, horses screamed. Bullets tore through the silence of the plains. When it was over, the air was thick with smoke and death. Rufus lay bleeding in the dirt, his men scattered or dead. Colt stood, his hand trembling, his gun still hot. Clara ran to him, her face pale. "You're hurt!" He looked down, blood seeped through his shirt. "Guess redemption don't come cheap," he muttered with a weak smile before collapsing. Clara caught him, tears blurring her vision. She pressed her hand to his wound, whispering, "Don't you dare die on me now." As the sun set behind them, painting the sky in crimson fire, Clara realized something she hadn't felt in years: hope. For the first time, someone had fought for her, not over her. And that night, as Colt lay unconscious in the cabin, Clara sat by his side, holding his hand and praying that the man who'd bought her would live long enough to know he hadn't bought a woman, he'd bought his salvation.